everybody, and welcome to Esports Arena's Hall of Heroes, sponsored by Progressive. My name is Cora Giorgio, and joining me to kick things off today, we have Dr. Chicken Inky with the most busy shirt that I've ever seen in my entire life. But Jay, you make it work.
Whoa, don't talk about my shirt like that. It is not busy. It's very plain and simple. It's complex for some people to understand.
I'm just not there yet. But
you'll get there after this
I'll get
specialist
there.
tournament. Don't worry. No, I'm really excited for this. This is actually, I believe, the first streamed specialist tournament, at least since specialist has been announced. Of course, Esports Arena did do this in the past with Progressive, but now that specialist is the official format, we're finally getting the first taste of what it's actually like to watch and compete in these tournaments with high-level players.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. We have 12 of the best players in the game right now who are going to be competing for a $10,000 prize pool on top of the class specialist pride, because this is, like you were saying, the first actual specialist tournament that has been broadcast, although the Open Cup system that has been running for the last several months have all been running the specialist format. But now with the World Championships complete and with Hunter Ace having won the final HCT World Championship in the Conquest format, moving forward, things are all going to be specialists. So today is going to be our first taste of a specialist format tournament where the players could select any deck that they wanted. When Esports Arena and Progressive did this tournament prior, it was the different players playing on their personal specialist classes. Now they just get to pick whatever class they think is the best in this current specialist meta. And we have come up with something I would say not particularly surprising, but we'll get back into that. We, of course, are going to be broadcasting today, tomorrow, and Sunday, so May 3rd through the 5th. Today, we're going to be having half of the players. Tomorrow will be the second half, and then Sunday, we're going to find out who our champion is. It will be the top 4 players playing out on day number 3. It's going to be round robin, best of 3 sets in the specialist format, of course, with the primary deck, secondary, and tertiary lists that players are able to switch between as the specialist rules do dictate. And then the top 4 players, based on record and tiebreakers, will move into a single elimination best of 5 bracket. And there will be a third place match playing out on Sunday. Jay, you're the specialist format master. Did I miss anything?
Let me check real quick. You got that we're playing specialist. You got that these are the best players. You got that we're sponsored by Progressive. Even though like half of those don't have to do with the specialist format.
It's true. We're also sponsored by Soylent.
Oh yeah, we are sponsored by Soylent. So that was very important. Trying to think. No, I think you nailed it on the head. I think everything else is gonna just speak when the games are played, and I'll try and give my best analysis on the specialist format, as it is really unique. It's really unique, as in Hearthstone has really never had this format in the past, but it's not quite as unique in, I would say, the deck variety, as you'll see soon enough.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at our groups for day number 1 and see which 6 players we're going to have playing today. And then, of course, the other 6 players will be playing through tomorrow. We've got right now, it's going to be Muzzy, Zalae, our reigning specialist champion, Deathstar, Feno, Reynad, RayC. So there you can see our 6 players that will be going at it today, and our matchups for rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 today. Of course, the coordinating numbers just being the players. So our first matchup is going to be Reynad versus Muzzy. Then we're going to have Deathstar versus Reynad, Feno versus Zalae after that. Not all of these matches will be streamed, of course, because there are a lot of matches to get through.
Yeah.
But on stream, I believe we're going to be having Reynad versus Muzzy up first. Then it's going to be Deathstar versus RayC. So our reigning champion and the hunter specialist himself, Deathstar, versus the man who I think at this point is at least 50% Panda, RayC. And then it is going to be Deathstar versus Feno as our third match. And then we're going to be rotating casters a little bit. And we're actually going to get Nostum and Will Scarlet up in here. I'm sure you guys have seen them casting some Esports Arena events in the past. And it's really great to have them back. I love working with those guys. So excited to get to cast with them throughout the course of this weekend as well. But of course, over the course of the weekend, you're going to see all of the players play. So don't worry if you've got a favorite player. We're going to have that schedule up for you. You're going to be able to know when to tune in to be able to see your favorite player play.
Yeah, really excited. I think actually just, we have a little chat going on right now, and Will Scarlet's jealous because we get to cast the non-rogue mirror. So
it's not even just the non-rogue mirror; it's the only match in the tournament that doesn't have a rogue on either side. And you know what? That's a good segue. Why don't we talk about what has happened here with class breakdowns? Obviously, with Rise of Shadows and the recent rotation into the Year of the Dragon, the meta is very new, but there are a couple of decks that just right now are standing out above the rest. And in particular, that is Rogue and Warrior. But it seems like about 13 of these players had the exact same mindset coming into this, and they did not want to bring Warrior. Instead, they brought Rogue. We have 13 Rogue players, 2 Hunter players, one of which is Deathstar, who was always going to bring Hunter. The other, Justsaiyan, who has brought Hunter instead of Rogue, much like his friends have. And then we have 1 Warrior player, and that's RayC. So 12 players, 12 players, 9 Rogues, excuse me, not 16 players with 13 Rogues. 12 players, 9 Rogues, 2 Hunters, 1 Warrior. What do you think about that?
So the reason this is because a lot of players, when they're first getting into the specialist format, you kind of have to narrow it down to what classes you determine are the best. Right now, I would say probably the 2 strongest specialist classes are for sure Warrior and Rogue. So I think off the bat, you can kind of narrow it down to bringing one of those 2 classes. Once you've determined that class, you can then determine your tech cards. There are a couple off-meta inclusions that you can do in specialists for classes, like for instance Hunter that we're seeing. There's also the occasional Priest, and there is the occasional Mage. I'm actually surprised to see that none of these players brought Mage, but the largest issue with Mage in the specialist format is although it is a very strong counter to Warrior, it absolutely gets destroyed by Rogue, and you can't really tech too much for the Rogue matchup, as Rogue requires a kind of weird way to build the deck in order to beat. Like for instance, Control Warrior can beat Rogue because it has all the removal and it has enough value with Dr. Boom towards the end game to actually get there against some of the value the Rogue can have. Mage, although it has a lot of value, doesn't necessarily have that early game removal that it needs to get to its value points. So I'm a little surprised not to see Mage, but I'm not surprised at all to see 9 Rogues in the tournament.
No, Rogue is sort of the hallmark right now, and I do feel like with the specialist format, you can tech your Rogue deck to try and beat Warrior. So if these Rogue players were expecting there to be a lot of Warrior decks, their primary deck would be sort of the basic Rogue, and then with the secondary and tertiary decks, they could put in maybe Togwaggle. Maybe they put in Togwaggle Schemes with the ability to sort of generate Zerog's Crown over and over again to get those boards of legendary minions to try and challenge the Warrior. There are certainly ways that Rogue can beat a Control Warrior. But I am shocked, frankly, that only one of these 12 players has brought Warrior at all. And it looks like if Ray did his homework, that he's going to have a really good shot across the board at taking down these Rogues, because Warrior is so popular right now because it is the best answer to all of these Rogue decks. So things are going to be very mirrored throughout the course of this tournament. But we're going to see how it plays out, because like we were saying, this is the first experience that we are really having with a specialist tournament with these popular players, and the first time that these players are getting to play in an invitational tournament with this format. So our first matchup is going to be Reynad versus Muzzy, 2 of the most iconic Hearthstone players in history. Reynad, of course, the creator of Team Tempo Storm, and Muzzy, as of very recently, having just left Team Tempo Storm alongside Justsaiyan, played on the team for years and years, but now have moved on to Radiance GG right before the World Championships. So really strange timing there, but going to be very interesting to see these 2 guys going up against each other.
Yeah, it is, and I think we can get a look at their deck lists in just a short moment, as both of these players, I believe, have brought Rogue. And we see from Muzzy's deck list first, you can see that a lot of these players go for a kind of middle of the grounds primary deck. The main deck, typically they want it to be strong against Rogue, I would say. Rogue is the most popular deck in Specialist, so you make your main deck good against Rogue, which we see Muzzy has done with Bloodsail, Corsair, and Acidic Swamp Ooze. And then secondary and tertiary is where you really branch off for different matchups. So as we can see from the secondary deck, it looks like he's trying to do pretty strong against Warrior. He's got access to Sprint to, keep his draw engine going. He's got a Heist Baron Togwaggle, so he can kind of get value off of that. And then he also has Chef Nami, and I think the goal for Muzzy towards the Warrior matchup is to assemble Chef Nami, double Shadow Step, and Myra's his whole deck. That's one of the ways you can beat Warrior, because Warrior typically doesn't have enough removal for the third Nami. Even if they have the first 2 brawls, the third Nami's just going to get them.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Chef Nomi Priest strategy against Warrior, which is just to Nomi Seance and have 3 big boards of 6/6s that hopefully the Warrior can't answer. But in my experience, having played quite a bit of that priest deck on ladder, usually the warrior is able to sort of piece apart that first Nomi board, and then if they have both brawls for the second, third board, warrior doesn't actually have that difficult of a time beating the triple Nomi. But we'll have to see if maybe the triple Nomi combined with High Spare and Togwaggle in combination with the rogue just being able to go so quickly through the entire deck with Myra's Unstable Element that the warrior can't draw all of the reactive pieces that they need by that point in time. And of course, Dr. Boom Mad Genius being the key factor for the warrior. But again, there's only one warrior deck in this entire tournament. So it's very likely that these counter warrior strategies for all these players that have brought them with their rogues, we're just not going to see those play out unless they go up against specifically RayC, who's the only player who's brought the warrior. In this case, both Reynad and Muzzy have rogue. So we're going to see mostly this main deck, I would think, that is sort of that counter rogue strategy.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's typically you want to go for the counter rogue strategy first because the majority of players do like to bring rogue. I do think rogue is probably the strongest class. As we can take a look at Reynad's take on the rogue, we can see here very interesting with his secondary deck. He opted to go for a kind of different value engine. Instead of going for your traditional, High Spare and Togwaggle along with Togwaggle scheme, he's opted to go for a Death Rattle package with Myra Rotspring and also Karen Bloodhoof. So this is something you don't typically see too much. And this is where the specialist format really shines is, we don't typically get to see cards like Myra Rotspring or Karen Bloodhoof see too much play. But in a specialist format where you can build your secondary deck to try and, beat up on a specific matchup, maybe perfect inclusions right here, especially Myra just giving a lot of value on top of just a good body to kind of help beat the Warriors or any kind of slower matchups.
I mean, I think this is actually going to be very beneficial for Reynad that he didn't go fully into the counter warrior strategy, and instead he's gone for a bit of a lighter take with those Death Rattle cards, because if he'd gone with a tertiary deck that was heavily counter warrior, it just wouldn't very likely come into play much in this tournament. So really interesting that he's gone for Myra Rotspring in particular, because that's not a card that I don't think we've ever seen played in Rogue, really.
Yeah, no, Myra Rotspring is typically one of those cards you find off something and you're like kind of happy when you find it, but you're not really super happy. You kind of just play like a blink fox and you get in the mirror and you're like, well, you might come down and hit the board, but you're probably not going to. So we'll see how it works out. But right off the bat, I'm looking at Muzzy with a Shadow Step, an Edwin, and a coin. And I'm thinking to myself, what could Reynad do about this? He does not have sap in his main deck. I think Muzzy's going to keep those two cards and just go in on a big Edwin immediately.
Well, there is unfortunately not much that Reynad is capable of doing in response to this Edwin Van Cleef other than making his own very large Edwin. There is also the possibility that off of the Evil Miscreant, we see the Ethereal Lackey that could discover a sap or maybe a Walk the Plank to be able to deal with the Edwin. But I don't think Muzzy is one of those players who's going to throw up a Waggle Pick with an Edwin on the board and allow Reynad to destroy that Waggle Pick and bounce that Edwin back to the hand. So this could be over very fast.
This could be over extremely fast, especially depending on how, Muzzy decides to play this. He could just, go for the Edwin on this following turn, or he could play it slower with the Henge Clan Thug. Honestly, I'm a big fan of getting this Edwin down as soon as I can. It's just, Reynad's main deck does not have sap. So in order for Reynad to answer this, he would have to expense either like backstab, double eviscerate, or have some crazy combination of cards, or face tank at least the first 10 or 12 damage that Edwin can produce.
And if the Edwin does even connect one time for 10 damage, then that's already such an advantage for Muzzy, where Reynad's going to be playing from behind the entire game, and the rest of his hand does support this early Edwin, especially with that raiding party just having been drawn. If he goes all in on this early Edwin, he will have the follow-up.
The Brotherhood shall prevail.
Yep, there you go. Seeing the Edwin just now. That is a 8-8 on turn 3. When is Edwin getting moved to the Hall of Fame?
Well, a lot of people were hoping 1 month ago, but that wasn't the case. So maybe 11 months from now. best that Reynad can do here is try and find something off of this Evil Miscreant. Doomsayer off of the Faceless Lackey is not a bad roll. At the very least, it might force Muzzy to trade the Edwin over the Doomsayer and divert some of the damage away from Reynad's face.
The Doomsayer actually was insanely strong there. Like you were saying, it does force this Edwin to either react or forfeit over the board, and I don't think that the board is going to want to be forfeited over here. So I think the Doomsayer has to be answered, but it's just so awkward. And I was about to say something, Cora. I realized that Reynad was actually the one with the 8/8 Edwin, because Reynad does not have Chef Nomi in his list.
Holy plot
And
twist.
he does not have Bloodsail Corsair. So Reynad actually is the... I don't know if Reynad got lucky or unlucky, because you know how Reynad always gets unlucky, but he had an 8/8, and then his opponent got a Doomsayer. So I don't quite know how I feel about this.
Well, I think Reynad's still feeling pretty okay about it. He doesn't get to hit face this turn, but he is able to clear off the Doomsayer, keep the Edwin on board, and Muzzy still does not have any way to answer this. He can clear up the Hench Clan this turn with the Kobold Lackey and the SI7 agent. Picks up the preparation, but doesn't actually have any spells to use it with right now. So what could have been a really good tempo swing turn with an Eviscerate or a Raiding Party is still just going to be a little bit weak from us.
I can't stress how huge it was that Edwin had to clear off a Doomsayer, though. Typically, it'd be a 2-drop that you would almost always ignore, and you would go face or value trade into the 1/5. And in doing so, if you go face, you push to 8 damage, and this game becomes a race at the end of the day, especially with Reynad's hand of Life Drinker Eviscerate. So that Doomsayer roll by Muzzy was absolutely massive, because it effectively said gain 8 health, which in this matchup is absurdly powerful if you have card advantage.
So what's the move here from us? He doesn't have a Raiding Party, so his Dread Corsair is going to be a little bit too expensive. He can clear up the Hench Clan, but then the Edwin is still a problem. Honestly, his hand right now is not going to get the job done, so he's looking for just a power draw off the top. Raiding Party with the preparation would give him the waggle pick to play the Dread Corsairs for free. If he could find Myra's, then maybe he could pick up the removal for the Edwin. But if Reynad has a way to clear the board here while still maintaining pressure by pushing that Edwin face, he's going to be able to maintain this lead.
Wouldn't be surprised to see just Deadly Poison come out here, clear up the 3/3, and then you can Evil Miscreant and push the 8 damage face. You're not worried about High Spirit and Togwaggle, because I don't believe Muzzy has it in his initial list. He does not. He has a Ziliax and Chef Nomi instead. So I don't think he's necessarily worried about that. It actually looks like Reynad would rather go for the draw rather than the Miscreants. The draw tells me that he really wants to draw one of these Dread Corsairs in order to get it down this turn. That way he protects the Edwin. So I like this as well. This does seem to be better than just playing out the Evil Miscreant. Because if you were to play out the Evil Miscreant, you know, the lackeys might not be as impactful as he would want them to, and he could forfeit over the Edwin. Right now, this Edwin is kind of carrying him, and he needs it to do the majority of the work.
Well, he does have a fair amount of burst damage from hand with the Waggle Pick picked up, South Sea Deckhand, or the Life Drinker with the Shadow Step. You can find some additional damage off of the Miscreant. His hand is shaping up to be able to end this game pretty quickly. Whereas Muzzy with a Shadow Step off the top, I mean, you can Shadow Step the Miscreant, try to find some lackeys that are going to do some work, but things just are still not looking good. And unfortunately, this is kind of the way that the Rogue Mirror goes sometimes. If you start out with a really big lead, the whole deck is built to try to maintain that tempo. It's called Tempo Rogue.
I do think if... Oh, Cheap Shot's actually insane here. He can clear off the Edwin with Cheap Shot. He leaves up the... Oh, that's just better, actually, because you just prep that out. Never mind. I was going to say he does leave up the 3/2, but you can just take this and prep it out. The prep on this is much better anyways. And then if you really wanted to, you could go ahead and Kobold Lackey the 3/2 remaining. But he ended up getting the contract that deals adjacent damage to minions, so he could kill it off as well. I actually didn't even know that was a contract card until just now.
Yeah, even picks up the Turncoat contract, which was just absolutely key. It's the assassinate with the betrayal effect. Essentially, it just deals the damage of the minion that you destroy to adjacent minions, and that was absolutely.
What is the name of that contract?
Turncoat.
Do you know the other three?
I can.
Oh, that's cheat. That's literally cheating. I can hear you typing. I can literally hear you typing.
No. Shush. Recruitment contract gives you a copy of the minion you destroy. Lucrative contract is add 2 coins to your hand. Does. And assassin's contract summons a patient assassin.
One of them is 2 coins. One of them deals adjacent damage. One of them is patient assassin. What is the 4th one?
Gives you a copy of the minion you destroy. So it would have given Muzzy and Edwin. So the turncoat contract was perfect for Muzzy there to be able to clear the board, but now Reynad realizes he's lost the board. He's probably not going to get the board back, but like I was saying before, his hand does have the damage to be able to finish this game up. Or at least he thinks so, because that was a pretty well-timed raiding party to give Muzzy the Dread Corsair, maybe prevent a Leroy Jenkins from being able to hit the board and go face.
Yeah, the raiding party is really well-timed. The biggest issue right now is this is where Life Drinker can be very important because it does get a life swing in. But he has to find a way to piece together this damage without taking too much damage himself. However, he does know that in Muzzy's deck list, there isn't things like... I was going to say he doesn't have too much burst, but he actually does. He does have the Leroy. Some players opt to not include the Leroy in the primary decks. But I think that's honestly probably a mistake. I think Leroy's too powerful of a card not to include, especially with what this deck does. So Reynad is going to be worried about the Leroy. He's going to have that on the back of his mind the entire time.
Yeah, both players do have that Leroy Jenkins in their main deck. And I actually really like the inclusion of just a single copy of the Bloodsail Corsair in Muzzy's main list. Obviously not as powerful as an Acidic Swamp Ooze, but... if the rogue is going to play Waggle Pick, they're going to swing with the Waggle Pick immediately, and you can tutor out the Bloodsail Corsair with the raiding party because it's a pirate. So it's just a way to search out that weapon removal a lot faster for the rogue, and it makes a lot of sense if you're expecting a lot of your opponents to be playing rogue as well.
So right there, it was a weird balance of Reynad trying to figure out the best way to push face damage while also not taking damage. So I really like the line he took with the SI7 agent. He made sure that he killed off the taunt and then presented a board and pushed a little bit of damage. So he did kind of the best of both worlds. The only issue right now is he is definitely running out of gas. He's going to need something to help him off of this Evil Miscreant or, you know, a Leroy of his own while also trying to survive, because I'm sure Muzzy will not give Reynad that much time. I'm sure he's going to try and, you know, set up a 2-turn of himself. That way he doesn't die on this turn, but also kills Reynad on the following turn.
Yeah, I think just the Waggle Pick with the Life Drinker and Dread Corsair is going to be the most defensive and offensive play that Muzzy can make this turn. And with the deckhand Greenskin Deadly Poison in hand as well, Muzzy's got a fair amount of burst damage.
Could have also full traded. I think I might have preferred the full trade, but I'm not actually sure if Muzzy sets up 2-turn with that. Muzzy could also be worried about weapon removal, but I'm not quite sure. Let me check if Reynad has weapon removal in his primary, which he does not, so he doesn't have to be worried about weapon removal.
This needs to be
Senjin
almost exactly Senjin. Or the Proud Defender, actually, would have had more health, technically. That is going to be it. Muzzy is going to have lethal here, and Reynad, even with that very early 8/8 Edwin Van Cleef, the Doomsayer for Muzzy forced the Edwin off of going face, and actually ended up saving Muzzy in the long term. Otherwise, Reynad very likely would have had lethal. And then the very well-timed Unidentified Contract off of the Ethereal Lackey, which gave Turncoat Contract a fully cleared board for Muzzy. He was able to bail himself out of a game where we thought an early Edwin Van Cleef like that is almost impossible to beat.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was like, was Reynad lucky to get the Edwin, or was he really unlucky to have the Doomsayer and the contract? The majority of cards in Rogue, I would say, are pretty decent answers to the Edwin. Even if Muzzy had to take something like Cheap Shot, it still would have technically had been an answer. There's also, you know, Assassinate. Sometimes if the Edwin's not damaged, you can get Walk the Plank, you can get Sap. So there are quite a bit of tools in the Rogue arsenal to answer that Edwin. So I don't think it was unlikely to get one of those answers. It was just more unlikely for the Doomsayer roll to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a 1 in all of the 2-drops in the game of Hearthstone.
That was a 1-1 because it happened to Reynad.
It was always going to be a Doomsayer. He was playing against Reynad. All right, so we're going into game number 2 here. And of course, with the first game in the Specialist format, you do have to play with your primary list. After game number 1, both players are allowed to switch to either their secondary or tertiary lists, although I don't believe Muzzy would want to swap off of his main deck. His other decks just are not nearly as well equipped to play against Rogue. And it looks like that's going to be pretty much the same situation for Reynad as well.
Reynad actually switches to his tertiary deck here.
He does.
Reynad's tertiary deck has 2 Acidic Swamp Oozes in it, and a Defender of Argus, and a Ziliax. So Reynad drops cards like Myra's Unstable Element, drops cards like the Life Drinkers in favor of, Harrison Jones, Acidic Swamp Ooze, and Ziliax, which are much better in the mirror than I would say those cards typically are. I think Life Drinker is still decent in the mirror, but I don't think it's the greatest. So it actually does appear that Reynad is going for his tertiary deck, which should help him out quite a bit in the matchup since, it wasn't his primary that was well suited for Rogue.
You know what? I think there might have been a bit of a discrepancy between the graphic we had on screen and the graphic we have for Reynad's submitted deck lists.
Yeah, the graphic for both Muzzy and Reynad accidentally had the secondary deck twice.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is only one deck that Reynad has brought that has the Death Rattle attacks with Myra Rotspring and Karen Bloodhoof. Reynad's tertiary deck is a lot more defensive and going to be better against the Rogue matchup. So Reynad maybe is looking to obviously win that first matchup, but if he loses versus a Rogue, then have an even better deck prepared in the face of other aggro as well. So with that double ooze tech, he should be in a reasonably good spot here now.
Yeah, I can agree with that. The one thing with Specialists, though, that I've learned is you typically want to set your deck to beat whatever you think the most popular one is, especially with Rogue. When you're playing Rogue, I think it's important to have your primary deck be very good in the mirror, because all matchups that aren't the mirror, you should have a really, really reasonable chance of beating. The only one is Warrior, but you're going to build a deck separate for Warrior anyways. So I actually really like the idea of building your primary for the specific mirror. Just because the mirror is probably going to be the most popular matchup. It's going to be your most difficult matchup besides Warrior. Warrior requires so many different tools to answer. And then your third deck you can make to beat like mages and hunters and, priests. But I would say most of the time your primary deck might just be good enough to beat those decks that you don't even have to worry about it.
Well, both guys here... 4 mana, 3/3. Both guys here had that early Evil Miscreant. There's no raiding parties on either side just yet. And there's no Edwin Van Cleef this game, so we're not going to see this one be quite as explosive, I don't think, as that previous game. And of course, we're playing best of 3 here, so if Reynad wins this game, he'll force game 3. If Muzzy wins this, Muzzy wins the series. Specialist games and matches can be a lot faster than what we're used to with Conquest or with Last Hero Standing, unless we're looking at the Warrior mirrors, in which case things can take quite a while. But with only a single Warrior deck out of 12 players in this tournament, there will be no Warrior mirrors.
Good. I don't think anybody at home can handle Warrior mirrors right now. I couldn't even handle them when I was playing Open Cups, and I was playing them.
You played a lot of Warrior mirrors, my friend.
I did. They are
enough for a lifetime.
They are not, they're not bad, not awful, not great, but they're Warrior mirrors. There's no other way to describe them.
There's a lot of ways we can describe them.
We can describe them with suiting up.
Oh, I love that fuse thing. I don't hate the tempo ooze here for Reynad. He knows that he's ahead on board, and he's trying to maintain that because his hand is, well, it's weak right now.
This story deserves a new ending.
It's really, really weak. He doesn't have Raiding Party. He doesn't have Myra's. He's low on value, so he's just trying to leverage this board as best he can.
This story deserves a new ending.
Okay, which ending are we talking about?
You know who says that, right? Please tell me you know what card says that.
Yes, it's Archivist Elysiana.
Thank you. Oh gosh, I got really worried there, Corey. You're supposed to be the one that knows that stuff.
I've played my share of Warrior Mirrors too, Jace.
Yeah, but have you played the ones with Double Baleful Brew?
No, I've not.
I've
played this.
a Warrior Mirror, my friend.
Oh God, no. I've gone to time once out of, I want to say, maybe 10 mirrors.
I've gone in open cups whenever I play the Warrior Mirror. If we both have, if it is like a card for card mirror, if we both have it, I think I've gone to time 3 or 4 times. It happens quite a lot. And Muzzy is just going to Myra's for 3 cards.
Well, he's got the Nomi in hand, and there is nothing that Reynad can do to answer a board of 7/6/6s. So Muzzy's just going to coin chef Nomi next turn, and if Reynad doesn't have lethal represented, Muzzy's going to win.
But Reynad is going to do his best to set up lethal, and I'm pretty positive. How much damage is it? It's actually not. Oh, with the fatigue, it will be lethal.
Yeah,
there just wasn't the
off of that
Leroy.
next turn.
That,
that was a sick play from Muzzy.
Yeah, that Nomi setup was actually insane from Muzzy. Unfortunately for him, there is a Leroy Jenkins staring him down.
Which means Reynad going as aggressive on board as he did very early with that Acidic Swamp Ooze is going to pay off. And even though his hand was not going to be equipped to go late in this game, he gets the bounce. But he doesn't have the mana? He doesn't have the mana. Hey, Reynad.
Okay.
He just traded 5 damage off of the board.
I was wondering why he was trading the damage. I was like, what? You just have lethal.
He had exact lethal with the 12 from Leroy Weapon and the 5 on the board, and he said, eh. It would have been more than lethal because of the 2 damage Muzzy would have taken off of fatigue. All right, Noodle, back to the drawing board for you. Clearly, it's been a long time since you played Hearthstone. Congratulations to Muzzy. He's going to take our first series of the day.
Well, that happened. At least it didn't.
Look, man, when you create Hearthstone, you don't need to justify anything. You don't need to answer anybody's questions.
Like I said, at least he didn't try an enrage face.
It could have been worse. There's not many ways it could have been worse, actually. That was... Ooh.
Hey, Trolden, how you doing? It's been a while.
Hi, YouTube. Nice to see you. Hope you're well. Oof. That's rough.
That's a heartbreaker. My heart is broken right now.
My heart hurts.
I don't even think production was ready. They're just like queuing up the 3rd graphic matchup, and they're like, "All right, Reynad's got this one. Let's get ready." And then he does that. I'm sure, like Shimona was behind the computer, like, "Oh, what do we do now?
Oh.
What do we do now?" This wasn't supposed to happen.
Mr. Hearthstone's gonna win a game. And they're like, "Nope." That well. In case you blinked and you missed it, Reynad traded his 5 damage on board over one of the Greasefire elemental tokens or whatever they're called, because he wanted to be able to Shadow Step Leroy and go face with Leroy again for lethal, except he was at 7 mana instead of 8, and he did not have the mana to play Leroy twice, even with the Shadow Step effect from the Waggle Pick. So Reynad, by not connecting face, even with just the Arathi Weaponsmith for fatigue to kill Muzzy, ended up sabotaging himself and losing the game as a result. So he, you know what? It happens. And it seems like it happens especially a lot to Reynad. So we'll get to see him again later on today. And hopefully by then he'll just be maybe a little bit more adjusted. Actually, Reynad's going to be on stream another 3 times, it looks like, today. So yeah, come back for our 6th match of the day, it looks like, if you guys want to see Reynad play again and see what happens. That's going to do it for our first series of the day. Congratulations to Muzzy picking up his first match 2-0 versus Reynad, looking very confident, as we often expect Muzzy to look. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into match number 2, and it is going to be our only non-rogue matchup of the day. It's going to be Deathstar, our reigning specialist champion, playing Hunter, and it's going to be RayC of Team Panda Global on the Warrior.
Yes. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
everybody, and welcome back to Esports Arena's Hall of Heroes, sponsored by Progressive. My name is Cora Georgiou, and I'm joined by Dr. Jikaninki, where we just saw Muzzy take down his first series versus Reynad 2-0. When Reynad had lethal, but decided he had to go do something else, so he just didn't want to win the game, I guess. Or something of that matter. Jay, can you hear me, bud? Oh, no, he can't hear me. All right, well, that's okay. Things happen.
Deaf.
Oh, no, I can hear you. He can't hear me. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. We're at the mercy of technology, as one young That's Admirable likes to say. My microphone is pitched much lower than it normally is, apparently, and Jace's ears aren't working, so that's cool.
My live? All right. Well, I don't know if anyone can hear Cora, so I'm just going to go ahead and cover for us real quick while Cora's figuring her stuff. I think I can hear her now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I could hear you. I could
you
hear
me?
you.
I
You
was
could-
like, maybe
yes.
I'm just deaf.
I did
was
the whole
like-
intro and everything. I was like, Jace, what do you think? And
I was like, I'm
you
deaf.
weren't there. You weren't there to catch me when I fell, Jace.
Yeah, I was just watching
Does
you
my
fall.
mic sound really low now, or does it sound normal again?
No, it sounds normal again. You're fine.
Oh, thank God.
It was even like kind of fine before.
Because I
It was
have
a little-
allergies, but they're not that bad. So people in
Honestly,
chat were
I
like, "Does
thought you
Cora
were just
sound
going
weird?"
for a different kind of tone of voice. I was like, wow, Cora's really changing her style. She got a new
Yeah.
haircut. She's got a new voice. Like, might just be a new person by the end of the cast.
I'm
Like, I don't
rebranding
know.
myself as a man. Because that's what it sounded like.
It wasn't that bad. It was just deeper.
Oh, good Lord. All right. Well, I don't know if my intro went out or if you
I don't
guys
think
could
it
hear
did. You want to go ahead and do it again?
Welcome
Throw
back to
back.
Esports Arena's Hall of Heroes, sponsored by Progressive. My name is Cora Georgiou. I'm joined by Dr. Jikaninki, and we just saw Muzzy take his first series 2-0 over Reynad, who had lethal in game number 2, but missed it in spectacular fashion. And that allowed Muzzy to wrap up his first series with a 2-0 score. And we're going to be going into our second series of the day. It's going to be our reigning champion of the previous specialist tournament, Deathstar, piloting his patented Hunter deck. And he's going to be going up against RayC on the only warrior that we have in the tournament.
Yeah, this one should be a good one. And I was looking at Deathstar's deck. RayC looks pretty typical for the warrior list. There's a couple like weird tech inclusions that I've seen, but this Hunter from Deathstar can only be described as Deathstar. There's no other word to describe what this Hunter is. It's like I'm just gonna call it Elic Hunter because it revolves around augmented Elic and Dire Frenzy. You just have to go check the deck list. Go check the Reddit post. Go check out what he has brought, because this is absolutely a treat to look at, because I don't know if it's gonna work, but we're gonna have to see if it works against warrior, rogues, the other Hunter in the tournament, because this deck is quite weird. I mean, I'm looking at the primary deck right now, and it's got Countess Ashmore, it's got a missile launcher, it's got rotten apple bombs, it's got Dire Frenzy, it's got augmented Elic, it's got deadly shots. Like, just
It's weird.
It's weird.
It is weird. You guys can check out all of the deck lists, ! Reddit in the chat. And then you can see the Reddit post that we have created for this Hall of Heroes event with all of the players and their lists, as well as the prize pool, the groups that you're going to be seeing over the course of a couple days. Just all the information about the tournament, all in one place. Just ! Reddit in the chat. This is a really weird Hunter deck that Deathstar has, but I am excited to see how this does against Warrior, because RayC has brought Warrior. And in general, Hunter is being played right now as a counter to that Warrior deck, but usually it's going to be a more straightforward mech list, and this is anything but straightforward for Deathstar, but that's absolutely what we've come to expect from him. For RayC, his main deck looks like a rather standard anti-rogue style of Hunter deck. His secondary is going to be a little bit more anti-mage, it looks like, with 2 copies of Big Game Hunter and a copy of Unseen Saboteur. And then his tertiary deck actually has a copy of Chef Nomi in it to go very, very, very long, it looks like, maybe for the warrior matchups.
Yeah, the tertiary is for warrior for Ray's side. The secondary is definitely for that mage. And then the primary is a little bit interesting because it does have acidic swamp boost. Typically, you don't need that against rogue, but it looks like Ray is really going for the strategy of I am not losing to rogue with my primary. One interesting thing I want to talk about with Deathstar's list, however, is in his tertiary list, he is playing Archivist Elysiana. And I really hope that we get to see, actually, I don't know if I hope for this, but I kind of hope for this. Augmented Elic, coin Elysiana to put 40 cards back. Is it even 40? How many cards is that? I think it's 40 cards back in the deck, right? Because it's not.
It would
it's
double
not
every
20.
put that you put in your deck.
So you put in 2 at a time. So it'd double go to 4 every time, and there'd be 10 options. So or 5 options. I don't know. I can't do math. That's hard.
That would be 20.
That'd be
You
20.
put 10 cards in your deck, it would double it to 20. But I've never seen it happen before. Maybe it's broken. Maybe it's broken because nobody's ever done it before. I don't know.
But Deathstar might do it. That's all that matters. Deathstar's the first to do everything.
He's the innovator when it comes to Hunter for sure. And in the previous Esports Arena Specialist tournament that we had when each of the players were playing their specialized classes, it was the specialist format, but we had far more class variety. Deathstar did win. He was playing Hunter then. He'll be playing Hunter when Hearthstone is around long after everybody else is because Hunter is just his baby. And I'm excited to see if him on a Hunter deck can stand up to all of the rogues that we've got in this tournament. Again, it's 12 players. 1 player has brought Warrior, that's RayC. 2 players have brought Hunter, Deathstar, and Justsaiyan. And the other 9 players all brought Rogue to this event.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see, his kind of take on this Hunter deck because he has double 9 lives in his primary list, but he only has 2 Death Rattle minions, or 3, I'm sorry. He's got the Rotten Apple Bomb, which would just like heal for 5. He's got the Ursatron, which draws a mech, and then he's got Shimmerfly, which discovers a spell. But they're not like really hard hitting 9 lives targets. Like they're not your Mechanica Whelp or your Oblivtron that you would typically see 9 lives played with.
Yeah, it's unusual. With the Rotten Apple Bomb, you can gain the 4 health off of it and potentially survive against a rogue. I think that's probably what he's going for with that secondary deck. But I don't know. We'll have to see how it works out against Warrior. He's going to be playing against plenty of rogues later on. And immediately we've got RayC furiously dabbing, wearing a panda head. And we're in for quite a series here.
Honestly, I don't know if I can ever talk to RayC again after what he just did.
I mean, I worked on about 10 weeks of TESPA with you. I've seen you dab once or twice, Jace.
I've never
Don't be the
dabbed in my
pot
life.
calling the
I've
kettle
literally
dabbing.
never dabbed in my life.
All right. Whatever you say. The cameras are flipped.
Dab is.
RayC should be on top piloting the Warrior, and Deathstar should be on the bottom piloting the Hunter, so we'll get that fixed for you as quickly as we can. Hopefully my microphone isn't making me sound like a demon. What in the world?
I don't know what that is. That's not RayC. RayC would have 2 people. That'd be cheating.
Is that Rocket League? I'm gonna go to Twitter real quick. Who's that guy?
Well, it was Deathstar v Deathstar earlier.
That was Rocket League. Okay. Well, shout out to Rocket League. What's up, guys? All right, so Warrior versus Hunter. It's going to be Deathstar consistently trying to outvalue RayC and be able to stick a board at some point to start pressuring. But Ray, with Dr. Boom Mad Genius and all of the mech generation that this Warrior deck has, is going to be able to turn his mechs into removal as well as development onto the board. And it's generally quite difficult for the Hunter to stick anything meaningful in this matchup, at least until the very late game when Dire Frenzy starts coming into play. With the Augmented Elic, of course, it's going to give Deathstar that much more reload. And I'm interested to see if he uses his Elics with the Frenzies at the right time, if Deathstar can even put enough cards in his deck to challenge Elysiana and Brewmaster.
I think he will put enough cards in his deck to challenge those 2 cards. The one thing I'm a little concerned with, though, is that they won't be great for tempo. For instance, he's going to need to put something like the Vicious Scalehide in order to kind of try and generate tempo onto the board. Because the biggest issue I'm seeing right now is a lot of times, sure, I mean, you can shuffle as many cards as you want into your deck against Warrior. Sure, you might beat them in the fatigue race if you do shuffle all those cards. The issue is they have cards called Omega Devastator and Dr. Boom Mad Genius. And once those cards hit the board, you are in deep trouble. And as you can see, RayC right there, already has a Dr. Boom Mad Genius. That is probably the best card in Hearthstone right now, as it is just absolutely insane what it does for the game.
It was not nearly as broken prior to Rise of Shadows and the rotation that happened, but now because the overall power level of the game is so much lower, the fact that Dr. Boom upgrades the hero power and makes it so much better on average than just the armor up that the warrior naturally has, plus giving these mechs rush. So they're not just development, they're also removal. Omega Devastator now deals 10 damage to a minion, but can also rush over another minion and trade favorably, leaving the Omega Devastator up, but essentially getting 3 for 1s every time you play that card. And that's just insane. Most decks can't deal with that level of value and removal that the warrior has right now.
Yeah, another reason why Dr. Boom just got so much better post-rotation is because in the past, it would typically be that even with Dr. Boom, the warrior would just get OTK'd or it would get outvalued by some kind of crazy like Togwaggle, combo. Right now, there's nothing like that in the game. The closest thing is Elysiana, but the deck that does Elysiana the best is actually, warrior itself.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, it makes a lot of sense that this, Dr. Boom is just that oppressive.
Yeah, we're not living in Shutterwalk land. We're not living in Four Horsemen Paladin world anymore. There just aren't the combo decks that there used to be that can challenge a control deck as strong as Control Warrior right now. Certainly Rogue can do it with Togwaggle and Togwaggle Scheme, or with a heavy Thief Rogue variant with Tess Greymane. There are some really value-oriented decks that can beat the Warrior, but those decks just really aren't strong in a specialist format, I don't think. They're going to be stronger in a format where you're trying to counter Warrior specifically, like Conquest, sort of like what we saw from Roger at the World Championships.
Honestly, I refuse to believe there's even a good lineup that consistently beats Warrior. I refuse to believe it.
In theory, maybe, but in practice, he didn't win Worlds, so it didn't work out.
I'm just not a believer in anything that's not Warrior right now. Warrior is the supreme master class.
Respect your mechy overlords. But you're seeing, just how much value RayC is already being able to generate from Dr. Boom Mad Genius. He had the delivery drone, was able to find the Clockwork Gnome, throw a bomb into the deck. If Deathstar had a minion on the board, the Gnome would have had Rush as well. Deathstar is forced to use one of the strongest combinations in this deck just to apply pressure to the board. The missile launcher with the Venomizer, if you can magnetize them together, then all of the missiles that the missile launcher shoots out at the end of the turn have poisonous and will fully clear the board. But Ray's not going to be putting a board in play that is ever super threatening, that Deathstar feels like he's going to need to save those 2 cards for. And also, Deathstar just needs a 6/6 in play right now.
Yeah, Deathstar needed something in play. It might have been, better later on if there was some kind of board state that got generated. But the issue right now is that's probably not going to happen by the time, you get to that point. If you get to that point, they've generated a board that big, you've probably already lost, even with that kind of combination of cards.
So I'm really wondering, at what point is Deathstar going to go for the Dire Frenzy combination with the Augmented Elic, and what does he want to shuffle? Does he want to shuffle more Elics into the deck? Does he want to shuffle Vicious Scale Hides for life gain? He doesn't really have very strong options in this deck.
I definitely think it's the Vicious Scale Hides because he needs them for tempo swings. The biggest thing is, sure, you can, like I said earlier, you can shuffle, you can have 20 extra Elics in your deck. If you're just playing 1 to 2 a turn, well, then Omega Devastator is going to come down. Something else is going to come down. I actually don't like RayC's liberal use of this Omega Devastator. I think it could be better used as later on a Dire Frenzy minion, because now you kind of forfeit it over if there were to be something that could answer it, like a Wing Blast or something like that. So not a huge fan of that, but I will say though, you just do need to get some kind of tempo. But it looks like he's going for the strategy of shuffling the Elics back in the deck, and that is going to be quite a lot of Elics.
I think with the first shuffle, it's okay to use it on the Elics, because then you can draw into additional Elics by the time you want to play your second Dire Frenzy. And you always want to have 2 Elics on the board when you play a Dire Frenzy. So this makes sense to me, and then maybe with the second Dire Frenzy, he'll prioritize that Vicious Scale Hide. And then, of course, with Zul'jin, he's going to be getting 2 more Dire Frenzies cast. as long as he has a beast on board when he plays Zul'jin, Deathstar can absolutely go toe-to-toe with RayC on having those additional cards in the late game to prevent fatigue.
I do like the way RayC's playing this right now by, you know, making sure that both these minions hit face. This is exactly how Warrior beats any deck that tries to outvalue it, is you have Dr. Boom up, you use your removal as efficiently as possible, and then you just ship the minion's face every turn you can. Because right now, it kind of puts Deathstar on the back foot where he doesn't have the luxury to go Elic along with another Dire Frenzy or something like that. He has to use, you know, Unleash the Beast here. Although this is a pretty clean clear from Deathstar here.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried for Ray in this one. I know that Ray really likes to play this deck aggressively, specifically in mirror matches, of course. But this does kind of feel like a race of sorts, a race against the clock, because eventually Deathstar will have all of these Dire Frenzied minions from the Augmented Elix and from the Zul'jin that he shuffled into his deck, and he's just going to outvalue Ray. On average, the Elysiana cards that you're discovering are going to be about middle of the crowd, about middle of the road, and Deathstar's minions are just going to be bigger than that. So I think if Ray is going to win this, he does need to pressure as much as he can, which is why I don't dislike the Omega Devastator early on, because I think if we get to the point where Omega Devastator gets full value from killing a Dire Frenzied minion, maybe it's already a little bit too late. Regardless, I like putting on the pressure here. I think this is exactly what Ray needs to be doing.
You see, the reason Ray did not put on the Beryllium Nullifier onto the Clockwork Goblin was because he was worried about the second Deadly Shot. He didn't want to lose to that card immediately, so he decided to distribute the body over 2. And then if he sees there's no Deadly Shot there, he can then evaluate whether he wants to like put the Missile Launcher on. The Missile Launcher actually is kind of strong here as it just buffs up the Beryllium Nullifier's body. Could opt to go face into the 6/7, then put it down to 2 health. The only issue with that is the missile launcher doesn't exactly kill it, so you might have to also ship in the militia commander. But I definitely want to start, you know, putting something together, putting some more pressure on. But I know RayC loves his hero powers, and I don't think he's going to want to miss this one either.
There are certain hero powers with Dr. Boom Mad Genius that you just can't not use. Blast Shield is one of them. Delivery Drone is another. Kaboom, you're fine to skip it. Micro Squad, you feel okay skipping it. But Delivery Drone and Blast Shield in particular, you just feel like there's gotta be a way that you can fit that in every time. So he'll be saving the Boom Reaver probably until he finds Kaboom or Micro Squad, will be my guess.
There's also some merit to going Brewmaster there on the Omega Devastator. I think Ray's thinking about it, because odds are your Elysiana won't be good enough to get you there in the long run, so you might as well try and kill them now. But I'm not quite sure how that is. And now we see here, this is exactly the scenario I was talking about. That, sure, great, Deathstar has, you know, so many cards in his deck, but there's 6/7s and 4/6s, and if he just keeps drawing a 6/7 and a 4/6, Ray will eventually be able to out-tempo it with the current warrior state.
Yeah, this would require Deathstar to find... geez. I mean, he's not playing Tracking, he's not playing Master's Call. Those are two of the really big resources that hunters want to have to be able to consistently reload their hand. But obviously, if you're playing a mech-oriented hunter deck, Master's Call is going to be unreliable, so you're not going to want to play that, which is why mid-range hunter is very popular right now as well, because it does have that consistent reload. And then you're sort of seeing Savannah High Main with Dire Frenzy as the counter-warrior strategy. But here, Deathstar just is taking sort of this hybrid scenario, this half mech, half beast oriented deck, and it's coming together in a way that is sort of disjointed, I think. Like, Zul'jin is his best play here, but is Zul'jin even really any good? What's he got in the pool? A couple Dire Frenzies and no beasts to play them on.
Yeah, there's a Deadly Shot, which isn't the worst. That was pretty decent, but the Dire Frenzies don't really do much. Coin, the Wyverns from the Unleash the Beast are probably his best option right now, as it does allow him to clear the board and develop 2 5/5s. But then it just gets met with the Super Collider. Oh, Wing Blast could be really strong if it hits properly.
He does manage to summon the wyverns before that second Dire Frenzy goes off, so he does get one shuffle off of it and one buff, which is really nice. But if these wing blasts went sort of awry, then there was the potential that he could end up with one less wyvern on the board. Things worked out okay for him, though. Unleash the Beast is a really, really powerful card.
Yeah, I really like how with the twin spell you get the other copy back. I think that's really unique to, you know, at least Zul'jin here. How you play it in the early game and then you just get those spells back. I think it's really strong. However, I just don't think it's going to be enough to get Deathstar back in this game. But, you know, Ray is running out of cards. Maybe there is a way that Deathstar just kind of finally out-tempos him.
I think it can happen. This was almost the best sequence of events the Deathstar could have hoped for. And even, you know, investing big onto the board with Zul'jin and getting all of those Unleash the Beasts. Obviously, your board's going to get cleared. It's a warrior. They have brawls. They have warpaths. You know you're not going to end up with anything going into your next turn. But getting the twin spell to Unleash the Beasts, the 9 lives onto Ursatron to be able to draw into more mechs, it was just the reload that he needed. The issue then being, if Ray can get through this hand again, Deathstar is going to be drawing 1 card a turn, and it's going to be those buffed beasts, but they don't do much on their own. So we'll have to see if this is enough to get Deathstar over the finish line. It was at the very least a start. Things are looking a lot better for him now than they were 2 turns ago.
Still going to be difficult for him, though, especially with the top decking phase. I think RayC will get him to the point where he's top decking, and you just got to rely that, you know, drawing a 6-7 each turn is going to get you there. That's a lot to rely on. I don't trust Boulder Fist Ogres, especially if they're 3 mana. I don't trust them.
You don't trust him?
Nah.
I met a Boulder Fist Ogre that I trust.
I've actually never met a Boulder Fist Ogre. That sounds terrifying.
Oh, I love that fuse thing.
Now imagine it's 3 mana and it has tusks. That's pretty scary.
Honestly, that probably makes it cuter.
Alright, Ray's just gonna clear the board here. And honestly, I think whenever Ray plays Elysiana, or whenever Ray finds Elysiana, he's probably just going to play it. He's not going to win in Fatigue, but he's going to need those Elysiana cards to be big stuff that he can play on the board and hopefully be able to continue pressuring with, because his deck is getting really thin.
Honestly, a lot of times that's all you just need is Warrior. It's just something big to put on the board, and you'll be fine. Especially if it's Boom Reaver. Boom Reaver is absolutely insane.
Yeah, you can get some really nice discovers off of it. Boom Reaver, Grom Hellscream is pretty good. Obviously, any neutral discovers that you can get. Usually the Elysianas end up being okay. But Ray choosing to run Brewmaster in this deck instead of Baleful Banker means that he doesn't want to play the Brewmaster with the Elysiana. He wants the Elysiana on the board as a 7/7 the turn that he plays it.
Yeah, that's typically why a lot of players in their primary list, if they do want to go for this strategy, they put a Baleful Banker in instead of the Brewmaster, because the Baleful Banker allows you to keep the Elysiana on board, which is very important in a lot of matchups, because you need that 7/7 body to either contest or push, like, lethal damage.
Let the pain speak to me.
Ooh. Missile launcher.
So Ray's going to try to draw through the rest of his deck before he replaces his deck with Archivist Elysiana.
Sorry, my dog just came in my room. I think she wants to watch the game.
It's alright, my cat made himself known earlier.
Alright, come on. Let's get out of here, Sheik.
You big puppo.
Yeah, she's massive. Gonna use the Brawl there. The Brawl needs to come out eventually. There's not really gonna be a better board state than 3 minions. Ooh, and gets a pretty good fortunate outcome there.
And with Delivery Drone, this is one of those hero powers that you really want to prioritize using if you can. And this worked out very well for Ray. Clockwork Goblin, shuffle the bomb into the deck, and doubles his removal here.
My dog is just so mischief. I'm sorry. I don't even hear
You know,
what's
Jay,
going
we
on
can't
back here.
we can't see you. you know.
I mean, I can see what she's doing, and I'm not happy with it. Y'all may not see it, but I see it. The tracking actually, as weird as it is a good find here, because it allows Deathstar to just kind of try and put something else onto the board. Later on, when he's like running out of gas, he can just go ahead and find like the other ally or something.
Yeah, he's not main decking those trackings, but of course you can find him off of Shimmerfly and then 9 lives to generate additional spells from Shimmerfly. As well as he's playing 2 copies of Marked Shot in the list. So Ray just still trucking along, trying to draw through the rest of his deck before he plays Elysiana. Just because he might as well, I suppose. He's going to be getting into fatigue before Deathstar this game, no matter what. But if he feels like he can continue to maintain pressure on the board without having to play Elysiana prematurely, then he'll just keep that strategy up. This is, however, his last card in the deck, so it's Elysiana time. And with the Micro Squad hero power this turn, it's actually pretty convenient. He can use that to clear up the Wyvern and the Shimmerfly. But I guess we're just going to have to be surprised.
It's going to be a surprise. I mean, a spectator, if it is spectator, could hover over the Elysiana on the left-hand side so we could see it if we really want to. Did the Coppertail not attack? Or am I just
to be
dumb?
honest, I didn't see it, but I would assume it did.
I don't think it did. Because I'm looking at the left bar right now.
A lot of things happened very quickly, though. Well, that was just Elysiana Micro Squad. Coppertail wouldn't have attacked then.
Well, that seems silly.
That seems like a mistake. Missed 4 damage, right? What's that about?
Ooh.
Dimensional Ripper. Summon 2 copies of a minion from your deck. So when you take Dimensional Ripper, you're hoping that you get other big stuff to summon with it. Although this does look like it's going to have to be a removal turn for Ray. But look at the hand for Deathstar now.
Turn.
Look at the hand for Deathstar now. He's got 1 more copy of Unleash the Beast. It does not have Twin Spell because it's the copy that was generated from Zul'jin. He's got a 9 lives, which can give him, you know, a random card from Shimmerfly or a mech off of Ursatron if he even has any mechs left in his deck. And then from there, he's drawn these threats that he's shuffled into the deck, but he's got primarily just 1 threat at a time, it's going to be. And we're assuming that the cards that Ray picked up off of Elysiana are going to be better than that.
Yeah, we can already see there. Security River is a pretty decent find off the Elysiana.
Vicious Scale Height's a good pickup. But it does seem like maybe just a couple more turns and Ray could be able to get board control back. If Deathstar can't end the game by then, which, I mean,
he's getting close.
He possibly could. Ray's down to 14. Well, Cruel Taskmaster makes Dimensional Ripper scary.
Oh, that's insane.
Yup.
The Boom Reaver coming in hot. Yeah, almost forgot that was there. That got shuffled like turn 5.
Yeah, Dimensional Ripper does not give your minions that you summon rush, but the Boom Reavers, because they are mechs, have rush.
Oh, I think you take a kill command here. You're trying to
end this.
try and end this because you cannot let this go that much longer. Security River is pretty decent though, as it does allow for a taunt to get in the way. I do think RayC has to be conscious of Unleash the Hounds though. When you get to this stage of the game, it's not something you really think about too much. But this is a really cute play here where you can Cruel Taskmaster. He's
And
gonna
then
hero
trade
power
over the
as well.
Shimmerfly. Now he is going to. So Ray actually is going very wide here. And just trying to set up for what looks to be maybe a 2-turn lethal. He's got the...
Yeah, I think that's what he's going for here.
Yeah, he's got another Cruel Taskmaster in the deck for some additional damage, at least that we know of. There could be weapons that he shuffled in as well. But he's trying to close this out.
So this is lethal for Deathstar.
Unleash the Hounds with
Unleash the Hounds with the 4/6
Scale Hide.
kill command hero power face.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah,
Yep, it's going to be 13 damage.
I don't honestly. I mean, we can see the kill command, and RayC's not going to be playing around kill command because it's not in the deck. But I feel like you probably win this game if you just play it safe.
Does Deathstar not see it?
I think he's figuring it out now.
That is a
definitely
buffed Vicious
lethal.
Scale Hide, right?
Maybe it's not. Maybe
that's just a
it's
1/3.
not. That tells me it's a 1/3.
Yeah.
I don't think Deathstar would have missed that.
We can't
We
actually
cannot
see its
see,
stat
yeah.
line in hand, unfortunately, but Deathstar is running 2 copies of Vicious Scale Hide, so he shuffled in the additional Dire Frenzied copies, but that is, I suppose, just the second natural copy. So it was not lethal. He did not miss lethal here, but he was able to get that Cyber Tech chip value, get some additional mech minions in hand. And now we'll see if Ray can stabilize again, because Deathstar's just generated a lot of stuff.
No, but if it's a 4/6, I'm gonna have words for Deathstar. I actually never talked to Deathstar, so I won't have words for him. But like, if I were to talk to him, I would have words with him.
Well, now Deathstar is staring down lethal. Oblivitron with the Safeguard is super sweet, but Oblivitron has Death Rattle, so you need the Oblivitron to be on the board and die. And he doesn't have time for that.
Oh, if only there's a 1-mana beast, you can go Explosive Trap. I mean, RayC would play around that with the hero power, but still something. You can Master's Call, hope to find the 4/6, if that's not a 4/6 itself, which I don't think it is at this point. Yeah, it's definitely 1/3.
This gonna hurt.
I'm just not really seeing a way out of this for him. The Flare could draw him into the buffed Scale Hide as well. If he finds it and plays it, he goes to 15. But the Apple Bomb is just safer. If there was a way to get through the security drones, the Skater Bot can give Oblivitron Rush, and then you could kill off the Oblivitron, pull out the Safeguard, and get the Vault safe as well from Oblivitron's Death Rattle. Or even better, Oblivitron pulls Oblivitron and then pulls Safeguard. But Deathstar wouldn't have any way of killing off the Oblivitron right now because all of these drones are in the way. And remember, I think Deathstar still got a couple bombs in his deck as well. From the Clockworks that RayC played earlier on.
How many Clockwork? I thought he only played, he played 1 or 2.
I want to say 2.
Well, then it's just lethal right here. If there's a
Easy
second one in the
peasy.
deck, it's just lethal right here. Told you.
There we go. That's bomb lethal.
That was a good spot from RayC. Look at this art.
Clap and you shall be bombed. Well, that's going to be game number 1 over to RayC. A couple weaknesses, I think, standing out for Deathstar's deck. He does not play Master's Call because he's playing a hybrid mech and beast variant of the deck, so his reload is just not going to be as powerful as if he was playing mid-range Hunter strictly. And it looked like it maybe was just a little bit too slow. With Mech Hunter, you have Oblivitron and Mechanical Whelp with 9 lives to be able to generate these consistent big boards of 7/7s and those sticky 2/2s that Death Rattle into 7/7s. So you're able to stick a powerful board and start pressuring for 2 or 3 turn lethal a little bit sooner. Whereas Deathstar was relying on taking it very long against the Warrior, which he absolutely did. He was going to win in fatigue. But this is not an odd warrior deck that can't fight back. This warrior has resources to kill you if you don't kill them first.
Yeah, the warrior has a lot of resources, especially with the Dr. Boom Mad Genius. It's absolutely insane what that card does for the deck. So right now, looking at the list, it looks like Deathstar is going to switch to his tertiary list, and his tertiary list actually does have an Archivist Elysiana, so we can see right there already in the opening hand. And it actually looks like RayC opted to go for his secondary list. His secondary list looks like it is designed to be better against, combo decks and also Mage. So as we can see from the opening hand, he has the Unseen Saboteur that may just be trying to pull out a Dire Frenzy, because you can pull out the Dire Frenzy, it just won't cast anything, it'll just kind of fizzle. So it looks like that's what RayC's plan is, to just try and stop some of the bleeding from those Dire Frenzies.
Yeah, I think that's really intelligent. Obviously, we saw Ray win game number 1 with both of the primary decks, but it was looking like it was maybe a little bit close. If his Elysiana had been weaker, there's a very real possibility he could have lost that game. So he'd like to just try and give himself a few more percentage points if he possibly can. So second Super Collider, Unseen Saboteur, one less weapons project because this Hunter isn't terribly aggressive early, as we can see Deathstar's trying to go very late, actually. And now Deathstar, with the addition of the Mechanical Whelp, is going to have a little bit more pressure in this one, and I think that's going to help him quite a bit. You don't really want to be 9 livesing Ursatron in this matchup. You want 7/7s.
Yeah, especially since they're mechs. Having mech tag makes it just that much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Pull him out with the Ursatron and then just continue swarming the board as much as you possibly can. And this version also does have the Archivist Elysiana as well, which we touched on before game number 1 started. So even more potential for Deathstar to take this one to fatigue and beyond.
I don't know if I like RayC just giving Deathstar a 5/5 that turn, though. He knew that there was the Unleash the Beast in the hand, so he knew playing the 5/6 had a good chance of pulling that out, because he knows it's there. So I'm not sure if I like, his strategy. I guess it was trying to set up for a Super Collider, is what it tells me, based off of the speed of play that RayC's going at. He wanted to get the 5/5 out on the board, that way he could Super Collider something, get value out of it.
Well, it worked out pretty well. We didn't get to see him get much use out of the Super Colliders in the previous game, but one of the big counters to a wide board of Mechanical Dragons from Mechanical Whelp is going to be that Super Collider. We can see RayC's already down to 15. 10 now after the attack from the Wyvern. Deathstar's putting on a lot more meaningful pressure this game.
RayC has a pretty decent answer here, though. He can go hit into the 2/2, override his weapon with the Weapons Project, Hero Power, and Shield Slam the 7/7. I think that might be one of his strongest plays here. He can then follow it up with the Harrison Jones if he has the life to work with on the following turn. I'm trying to think if there's anything else he can try and do this turn. I guess there's also... No, the Militia Commander play is not as strong. I think it has to be the Weapons Project play. Also sets up for Harrison Jones, which I like, but don't know if Harrison Jones is going to be too relevant here, because I don't think he might have the... I don't even know if he'll have the time to play it.
I don't think he's got the opportunity for proactive plays very much this game. I'm just gonna go ahead and Harrison right now, actually.
Yeah, that's actually much stronger. I completely forgot about the 1/2 and having the 6 armor. He could just do this turn. This is the best play that turn. Just because he gets the 3 draw now, that's absolutely insane.
I want to blame you for that one, because I was formally dismissing my cat from my room on that turn. So
okay, that's
hopefully
fine.
there won't be any more rogue meows in the background. Sorry about that, guys. He's very old and very annoying.
Wow, I see how it is. Just don't like your cat. It's cool.
Clearly.
It's cool. It's cool. I'll get Pete on the case soon enough.
Yeah, him and I are fighting right now.
I can tell by those meows.
He's so needy. Didn't think I'd be a cat lady quite this young. Alright, Raygon, he's up to 17. Got both Omega Devastators unlocked into the next turn, as well as the Omega Assemblies, so he's got plenty of minions at his disposal. Things are looking better.
Yeah, it's actually looking really good for RayC right now. The only thing he's missing is Dr. Boom Mad Genius. Once he draws that card, I think this game is probably just locked up. And there you go. Another reason why this deck is probably strong in this matchup is BGH. That card just clears up Mechanical Wealth like they're nothing.
Well, now that Ray has stabilized, and it's looking like he's even won the board to an extent, we might have to see Deathstar shifting to that long game plan. The issue is he just doesn't have a lot of resources to do that right now. He doesn't have the Dire Frenzies in hand. He doesn't have a wide board to go with the Cybertech chip. Things just aren't really coming together.
Multi-shot.
I mean, as far as multi-shots go, this is really good.
Pog. It kills 2 minions. 3-3-4-2. Snipe. Sorry, I can only call certain things. I'm not just like profit. I'm just more like a mini profit.
Just a tiny profit.
Just a tiny profit.
Small profit. War Gear and another Omega Devastator off of the assembly. That's insane. He's got 3 Devastators. If Ray can find Dr. Boom Mad Genius, how is Deathstar supposed to deal with all of this? He can put a bunch of stuff into his deck, but he can't draw it immediately.
He's just gonna Brewmaster the BGH too. He understands that, hey, look, I just need to be able to remove stuff. And right now he has 3 Devastators and a BGH. I think removal is something RayC has in hand.
Deathstar can unleash the beast and Dire Frenzy and hope to draw into his 8/8 Wyverns immediately. But if he uses Dire Frenzy without the Augmented Elic at any point, then he's essentially admitting to potentially losing in fatigue. Because he does not have a Brewmaster or a Baleful Banker to go with Archivist Elysiana, whereas RayC, well, normally does, but we can see he just played it. So maybe we'll see Deathstar go for this Dire Frenzy.
All right, here comes the tempo. Devastator War Gear on the 1-3. Push it face. RayC definitely knows how to play this deck pretty proficiently. You can see him. He doesn't. Most of the turns, he doesn't really have to, think on it. It's mostly autopilot at this point. He's played this deck enough in Open Cups, and he understands.
It's like I said earlier. He's a really aggressive player with this deck.
That's how you have to be with this deck. You can't really play the clear game against most decks. I think that's where a lot of players go wrong, and how the control decks that aren't warrior can kind of get an edge slightly, is that a lot of players don't play as aggressively as you should with the deck, and because of that they give their other people unnecessary advantages. Like right here, Omega Devastator, I don't think I would go for the other Devastator. I'd probably go for the Militia Commander, but I'd still just push everything face, and this game is essentially over at this point. Deathstar, you can see by his eye roll, he's like, wow, that's the 3rd Devastator. It's been a devastating game.
I mean, I'm sure Deathstar is not used to losing to warriors with this deck. This deck is tricked out to absolutely destroy Control Warrior, but sometimes the warrior just has the nuts. They have everything that they need. And this was a game even without Dr. Boom Mad Genius. RayC's mechs don't have Rush, but he still just has 3 Omega Devastators on the board because of the assemblies being so powerful on turn 10 exactly. And RayC's actually going to take this series 2-0, which was not expected, but I mean, that's just the power of Warrior right now. It's used primarily to beat Rogue, but even the counter in the form of Hunter doesn't get there every time.
I don't know. I'm gonna be a bummer here and say I don't like Deathstar's Hunter. I
Can't
don't.
say that, man.
Maybe it's better against Rogue. Maybe I I think it might be stronger against Rogue than it is Warrior, especially in the primary list, as it does have answers like Missile Launcher, Venomizer for wide board states. It also has 2 acidic Swamp Oozes, which is really good. Honestly, putting 2 Oozes in any deck just makes you pretty decent against Rogue.
Yeah.
So I just don't know how I feel about this, and I think it's a mistake from a lot of these players not to bring Warrior. Warrior, I honestly think probably is the best specialist class we have right now besides Rogue. I think Rogue is strong, but I think Warrior just does so much more than Rogue right now.
It's hard to make the Warrior more aggressive than it already is, but I think a lot of people are just really underestimating how aggressive the deck can be. No, it's not a deck that is intended to kill your opponent before you go into fatigue, but with Dr. Boom, with Omega Assemblies, with all of the minion generation that it has, and all of the removal that it has, it really makes those minions count. And that's what we saw in those games with RayC. He was able to get through to the Archivist Elysiana, and because Deathstar was drawing through his deck so slowly, even though he had 20 plus cards in his deck at the end of the game, it just didn't really matter. So we'll have to see. That's the only time Deathstar is going to be playing against a Warrior in this tournament. So we'll have to see how he does against all of the Rogues, because it does appear like he intended for this deck to go up against specifically Rogue. So I'm excited to see how that's actually going to work out for him a little bit later on when we see him going up against Feno actually in our next series, as well as Muzzy later on, and Reynad in our final series of the day. So you're going to be seeing more of that Hunter deck from Deathstar. Not a great showing in the first series of the day, but hopefully things are going to be looking up for him when we come back a little bit later on. But we are going to go to a short break, and when we return, it is going to be Feno piloting Rogue and Deathstar yet again back on this Hunter.
Yes. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Esports Arena's Hall of Heroes, sponsored by Progressive. My name is Cora Georgiou. I'm joined by Dr. J as we are about ready to get into our third series of the day, and things are booking so far. We've had a couple of 2-0 victories so far. We just saw RayC take a series off of our reigning champion Deathstar, piloting one of the only 2 Hunter classes in the tournament. And on our first series of the day, we had Muzzy with a 2-0 victory over Reynad in a rogue mirror. But now we're going to see Deathstar with his Hunter deck yet again, and going up against the matchup that we're thinking he was expecting to see maybe a little bit more often here, as Feno is piloting a rogue.
Yeah, Rogue is the most brought class in this tournament right now, with 9 of the 12 players representing Rogue right now. 2 of them on Hunter and only 1 of them on Warrior. So there is quite the field of Rogues out there. So it looks to be that Deathstar may have expected that, especially with a lot of his tech decisions. We can see that in 2 of his lists, he does have 2 copies of Acidic Swamp Ooze. So he's pretty prepared for it, but is he going to be prepared enough? Because Rogue's a powerhouse. I don't know if Hunter can be the same powerhouse that Rogue is.
Rogue is scary. You know what? Hunter was that powerhouse. For years it was that powerhouse. But now it's just in a very different place. And Rogue has maintained a lot of the strength that it had prior to Rise of Shadows, whereas a lot of other classes have become lower in power level. So cards like Raiding Party and Myra's Unstable Element, and some of the evergreen set like Preparation and Backstab are just absolute powerhouses right now. And we can see with Feno's lists, he's gone for a very streamlined main deck, something very aggressive, very standard as to what you'll be seeing very likely on ladder when you're running into Rogue. His secondary deck is going to be more of a counter warrior strategy with Heist Baron, Togwaggle, and Chef Nomi. And then his tertiary deck is going to look a little bit more like that main deck, but he's got a couple copies of Walk the Plank included.
Yeah, Walk the Plank is one of those cards that's very strong against a lot of, heavy taunt minions. It's also just pretty decent removal with the combination of Preparation. It's much better than Sap in a lot of scenarios, where Sap, you just kind of put it back in the hand, you delay the inevitable. Walk the Plank would be really good against something like, just an example that comes off the top of my head is, it's Nomi Priest, where they may be playing their Grave Horrors, and you can Walk the Plank the Grave Horror rather than Sap it, because it basically costs 1 to 2, maybe even free. So with that Walk the Plank inclusion, it's going to be really interesting what he decides to cue that into. I actually would think it would be mostly for Mage, though. I think it's mostly for Mage as an answer for Mountain Giant. That way he doesn't have to worry about Mountain Giant into Conjuring's Call, bringing out Grave Horrors. I think that's what Walk the Plank is intended for.
Yeah, a lot of the time the Rogue can race the Mage, but if they do get that Mountain Giant stuck on turn 4 into Conjurer's Calling for multiple Grave Horrors, then it can be really difficult for the Rogue to sort of be able to get past that. I mean, that was pretty much the entire strategy of Chef Nomi Priest against Rogue, was just to seance Grave Horrors and try to put up a big taunt wall that the Rogue can't deal with. Well, that's similar to what the Mage would be trying to do. So you have coverage against that Priest deck, you have coverage against Mage, and obviously neither of those decks are in this tournament, so we're very likely not going to be seeing that third deck played. But it's a good thought to have. And in maybe a wider field of a tournament, much like the Las Vegas Masters event is going to be, several hundred players instead of just 12, you're going to need that kind of coverage if you're bringing Rogue.
Yeah, so typically what you'll see from these players is their primary is for Rogue, their secondary is for Warrior, and their tertiary is for Mage. Typically, Mage will cover the majority of other matchups as well. If it doesn't, you just go with your primary, which covers the majority of matchups. So you kind of see this strategy formulate around what is the most popular brings. Obviously, Rogue and Warrior, they're the 2 most popular brings in specialist tournaments. There's no arguing that. They're the most consistent. They're the best equipped in order to deal with other classes. For instance, with Rogue, we have these Walk the Plank inclusions that help them against Mage. And Warrior, you have these BGH inclusions that you really can't do in the other decks. Like, you can't just randomly put in a BGH into something like Master's Call Hunter. It doesn't work. You can't randomly put in a BGH into Mage, because, Mage doesn't want to be playing 5 mana for a 4/2, even if it is a slight tempo swing.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a reason why Rogue is probably the most popular class on ladder right now. It's just the most consistent across the board. In a ladder environment, you don't know what you're going to run into, and just that primary Rogue deck that we're seeing Feno and a lot of the other players have as their main deck is good enough to take wins off of those decks that you might not be expecting other players to bring. So try and cover yourself against the most popular decks, and then if somebody brings something weird, just try and rely on the natural strength of the deck that you've got. But here we can see Deathstar wears the crown from our previous specialist event, as he was the champion with his patented hunter. But this is a much different ball game now. We don't have all 9 classes represented. We only have 3. And 9 of the 12 players here have brought rogues. So we're going to see, did he do a good enough job insulating himself against the aggression of a rogue deck? He does have Rotten Apple Bombs with 9 lives to give him some additional life gain. Is that going to be good enough, though?
Yeah, this is where we see how good this hunter is against rogue, because right now, especially with this start, it's not looking the greatest. Feno did keep the Edwin Van Cleef on the coin. Wouldn't be surprised to see him, save that for a little bit, especially because even Mystery can come down now. He can then try and, weave in a hero power with the Lackey, and then he can go Lackey Edwin the following turn. So his curve is going to be very strong for the next couple turns.
At the very least, these augmented Alex can be used just as well-statted 3-drops to try and fight back against some of the early curve from the rogue. And Wing Blast will be really, really important in this matchup as well. If you get that augmented Elec, are able to clear something up and then Wing Blast away, say a Henge Clan Thug, that's a really good tempo swing for the hunter.
Yeah, the Wing Blast with something like Unleash the Hounds is pretty strong, or even Unleash the Beast. The issue is you have to kind of live that turn, and Feno is just putting on the heat right now. I'm going to go ahead and save one of those 1-drops, probably wants to use it with the Edwin Van Cleef on the following next couple turns.
Well, with the prep picked up, we could be seeing a rather large Edwin Van Cleef if Feno's able to find Raiding Party in particular. But right now it looks like this is just going to be SI7 agent plus the Faceless Lackey this turn, try to piece apart the board.
Yeah, I think the SI7's too clean. The Edwin Van Cleef, unless he wants to commit the prep, is only a 4/4 right now, and I don't think that's quite big enough to where you would want it to be. You also want to make sure your board's wide enough for the deadly shot, so the SI7 helps out quite a bit in doing so. He could also use the 3/4 to take a value trade if he wants to, just to try and keep his board state as wide as possible. But I'm not quite sure what he's going for this. This tells me that he's looking to go face with the 3/4, yeah. I was curious where he was heading with that one, because if you put the 1/1 into the 1/1, you're holding onto the dagger for a specific reason. That tells me that, he wants to start pushing face damage because he has the Leroy.
Yeah, I think the preparation's just a little bit too good to use just as a +2/+2 buff onto the Edwin Van Cleef. If Feno didn't have other options that turn, if he didn't have SI7s in hand, maybe he would have gone for a more all-in Edwin strategy, but I think this was a perfect middle ground.
Also has to be conscious of deadly shots, because there are 2 deadly shots in the main deck list for Deathstar, so he wants to make sure he's trying to play around that as much as possible.
Yeah, again, this primary list from Deathstar is a counter rogue strategy. Or at least as much as you can try to counter rogue. But with the Zul'jin in hand, having had access to the Unleash the Beasts early on, now he's going to have that big power turn on 10, where he can get down Zul'jin and immediately start clearing again, start having that built-in removal from the Wyverns that he then will likely be able to keep on the board.
I'm not opposed to seeing prep SI7 face, Edwin Van Cleef face, and push everything face this turn. The thing is, you'll only really need the prep for Amira's off the top, or I guess to use with the Sap on the following turn. The thing is, you can go Sap Leroy on the same turn, so I don't think you're necessarily worried about trying to prep out the Sap. It's kind of bad if you draw Raiding Party to use the prep, but I don't know if this is enough pressure to end the game right now, especially because you know he has one of the Unleash the Beasts.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this. Deathstar has 2 marked shots and another Wing Blast in the deck. If he had that second Wing Blast right now, you know he's got Unleash the Beast. He could go Unleash the Beast, Wing Blast, be able to keep a 5/2 on the board, and all you would have is a Scavenging Hyena. Maybe that's a little bit too much to play around in Feno's mind.
Oh, with the Myra's draw, it's going to reward Feno heavily for holding onto the prep, because he's going to have 4 mana on the backswing to play whatever he wants this turn.
That was a fantastic top deck, and we can see he's main decking 2 copies of Life Drinker, which are really, really good in the mirror because they give you that little bit of extra life gain and damage that you sometimes are lacking with a rogue deck. And here, with double Life Drinker, double Eviscerate, and a Leroy in hand, this is all the damage that Feno could want.
Yeah, that is a lot of damage. And the funny thing is, Life Drinker's a beast, so if they were to die, you would get the Scavenging Hyena buff.
Unity, precision.
I don't know why I found that so funny, but it's funny.
Haven't seen enough buffed Scavenging Hyenas for one lifetime, Jace?
No, I have not. It's a really good sap target.
Oh, I did that backwards.
Just weaving in damage at this point. This is the story of Rogue, Cora.
It's
Beautiful story.
more like a short story or a novella. We're
Short
not looking
novel.
at War and Peace here. That's a warrior magic. Yeah, of course, because you magnetize Ziliax onto the Ursatron when it's sapped. Just get the Ursatron back. It doesn't maintain that magnetic buff. And this is going to be lethal here. Feno's going to take game number 1. Deathstar's anti-rogue strategy on Hunter. Maybe not coming together the way that he wanted it to. He's 0-3 right now in this tournament, and it didn't seem like his curve was terribly bad. It was a little bit heavy, but he's just not playing a lot of early game in the deck anyway that is particularly well positioned. He's got a couple Shimmerflies, couple Oozes, 1 Venomizer that he wants to use primarily with the missile launcher that he has in the deck as a form of board clear. And then he's got those Elix, and he had the Elix. So the Elix are actually the best on-curve early play that he has. It just didn't come together for him this time.
Yeah, I think he's going to opt to switch to his secondary list. His secondary list seems to be better against Rogue. It does have copies of Spring Paw, has a copy of Tracking, so he can find some of their pieces. Still has the double Ooze. It's got Animal Companions, which are much better on turn 3 against Rogue than a lot of his plays with his traditional deck. And he drops a lot of the value engine. Like, he doesn't have 9 lives. He doesn't have the Countess Ashmore. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him go with the secondary list. And as for Feno, it's interesting to say what he goes for. I wouldn't be surprised if he just runs it back with the primary. I think the primary might just be strong enough. Could be some merit to using Walk the Planks, but I don't necessarily think Walk the Planks are needed.
Yeah, I mean, he's only playing 1 sap in his primary deck, but he had it when he needed it. And the only things that are different between the first deck and the second deck are 2 Walk the Planks and 2 saps versus 2 SI7 agents. And the addition of the Bloodsail Corsair, primarily. So if you don't think you're going to need that additional removal, first deck's just good enough.
All right, with Deathstar's hand's not the strongest right now, but the inclusion of Acidic Swamp Ooze is going to help out quite a bit. That's the one card that, if you have against Rogue, it just helps out by leaps and bounds. Just because what it does is insane. It clears off 4 damage, and then it returns a minion to the hand. Even if it's discounted, a lot of times it just is good enough to return that minion back.
Yeah, I mean, if you can Acidic Swamp Ooze a Waggle Pick before your opponent wanted to break it, and be able to, say, get a Henchclan Thug off of the board, or in some cases get a really big Edwin Van Cleef off of the board, that's a big tempo gain, and something that Deathstar is absolutely going to need in this game, because he's going to start out being behind. If Feno finds preparation, this hand is insane, for instance. Backstab would do it too. Or even just another 1-drop at this rate. Yep,
Oh my
backstab.
gosh, backstab. That's why I was worried about playing the Ooze, is if there's a backstab 3-drop, like Miscreant or Raiding Party, you get heavily punished